Welcome to the Give Smart podcast.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Give Smart podcast. We're on episode number 2, and I'm so excited to welcome Kat Kalman, and she is the founder and the executive director of Spread the Vote and Project ID, and she's absolutely amazing. And she is a lawyer. She's an author. You can see the book right behind her there. And she is a social entrepreneur. She is also my friend and she is also my boss. So, hi, Kat. And she's also amazing. And she was just appointed to the board of NBC International, which is absolutely just the coolest thing. So, welcome, Kat.
Well, I'm excited you finally have a podcast. People need to hear from you.
Oh, thank you. All right. So, we're going to talk a little bit about her charity today and the work that Spread the Vote plus Project ID is doing. And we're going to kick it off with just kind of letting her talk a little bit about it. So, Kat, tell us a little bit about why you started Spread the Vote and how that kind of morphed into Project ID and then Project ID Action Fund.
This is weird telling you this because you've been there since almost day one. So we'll pretend you don't know. So I as Jennifer said, I am a lawyer, and in law school I had studied voting rights and had been paying a lot of attention to the voter ID laws that have been passing in the states after Shelby County v. Holder, the very famous Supreme Court decision in which they took out a huge chunk of the teeth of the Voting Rights Act. And then when we had the 2016 presidential election, it was pretty clear that voter ID laws had an impact. If you look, for instance, at the margin of victory between Hillary and Trump in Wisconsin, it was like, it's been many years and several presidential elections, but I think it was like 14,000 people was the difference. And there are over 200,000 registered voters in Wisconsin who don't have ID. And so it seemed to me that we needed a solution, and there are a ton of really good organizations working on legislative solutions, working on judicial solutions, but those weren't working. Voter ID laws were just expanding. And so I thought, well, we can just get people IDs. And so I launched Spread the Vote. But as soon as we started, we were in Georgia, and we were trying to, ask people, do you want a voter ID? These little sort of free and extreme air quotes, because they usually are still pretty burdensome to get, IDs that you can only use for voting. And people were looking at us and saying, I need an ID so I could get a job. I need an ID so I can have a place to live. I need my ID so I can stay in that shelter tonight. Like, can you help me with that? And so we realized that we were actually encountering a much bigger problem and a very different problem than we thought we were. And so we pivoted and started focusing on getting people the DMV IDs, the state IDs that they need for life, for jobs, for education, for access to services and benefits and all of the things that you need an ID for everything. And then during elections, we would still work to help those folks vote. And so that's what we've been doing. Last month was our 8th anniversary. While we've been focusing on helping people across the country get all the documents they need to get their IDs, we'd really been paying attention to the larger problem. There are 26 million American adults who don't have photo ID. There is no one organization. No matter how many organizations we have, we can't solve that problem person to person. We really need a legislative solution. So in 2022, I'm pretty sure, we introduced with Senator Sean Castaneda, or Representative Sean Castaneda of Illinois, the IDs for an Inclusive Democracy Act, which is a bill that would create a free and optional federal ID for every single American. And we did that through an organization that we created. I think, in 2020 called the Project ID Action Fund, which is essentially the political arm of our C3. So 501c3 nonprofits are not allowed to engage in political activity. There's like a 10% margin of error, but you can't endorse candidates. There's a lot that you can't do. In exchange for that, your donations are tax deductible. 501c4s are allowed to do political actions, but they give up that tax deductible status. So we started a C4 to be able to introduce the national legislation, which, I knew was a big goal, state legislation, which we've done, and to be able to endorse candidates who are pro-ID to try to help increase ID access across the country. So now we're really focused on helping folks on the ground get IDs, either ourselves or through our partners. I'm building bigger and bigger ID coalitions across the country so that we can expand the number of people who are doing this work, but then also making legislative changes so that we can increase ID access for everybody.
Amazing. And because I know a little bit about the organization and I know what great work is happening, not just, I don't know, not just nationally, but just on a really personal level. Do you have maybe just a little anecdotal story that you could share with us about someone who actually got an ID that we helped with that had a life-changing experience because of the fact that they now have this piece of plastic?
Yeah, so my very favorite client, I think, Rhonda, I'm lived in LA. We do a lot of work in LA. Now I'm mostly living in Arizona, but I'm also LA. And we were in Skid Row in LA multiple times a week. And I had this client, Rhonda. She is around my age. And deaf. And was just living on the streets in a tent in Skid Row in LA, which is a very unsafe place for anyone, particularly for a woman, particularly for a Black woman, particularly for a Black woman who has a disability, like being deaf. And she really needed an ID so that she could get housing. And it was really complicated. We had to get her a birth certificate, but she had no connection to family, etc. And one of the problems when you're trying to get a birth certificate, they will ask you for your ID. But when you try to get a new ID, they will ask for your birth certificate. So it's this real catch-22. And every state has different rules for how you can get a birth certificate without an ID. But depending on the state, it can be really, really burdensome. And so we had to go. It took us months to be able to finally get her birth certificate. But we got it, and I put together her other documents, and then she and I and her case manager went to the DMV. One of the things I think people don't realize is that social workers and case managers very rarely have the ability, either because of funds or training or overwork, to be able to get their clients that IDs that they need to access the services they're trying to get them, which is where we come in. We have social workers and case managers who bring their clients all the time because they can't do it. And so that's why her case manager was there and with us. Anyways, we went to the DMV, we got her ID, we were all in tears, we were all very, very happy. And Rhonda had always come in with a ton of bags, which is normal if you go around a house. You have to take all of your stuff with you everywhere. And then it was, a couple of weeks later, and she ran into the room where we do our ID work on Skid Row, and she had no bags. She just had a little purse, and she had this huge smile, and she had a badge because she had been placed in housing. There's this really cool new like housing development made out of shipping containers in LA. And as soon as she'd gotten her ID, her case manager had been able to get her own apartment in this really nice new housing development. And she was so thrilled. And she was safe for the first time. And it was such a very, very stark reminder of the life-changing difference that having an ID can make.
Amazing. I love it. So because this podcast is about giving, a little bit about micro giving and a whole lot about community giving and what that means. Tell us a little bit about where the money goes when it comes in directly to the organization. How's it?
Our money goes to a couple of places. The first place it goes is the work we do directly on the ground. So we pay for our clients' IDs, which cost an average of $40. It ranges around the country, but that's about an average. And that's, we help get birth certificates, which we have to pay for in most states. We also provide transportation to the DMV. One of the big problems, there's a few. One is more than 10 million Americans live more than 10 miles from a DMV. And you don't have a driver's license if you don't have an ID. And if you're in a very rural area, there may not be good public transportation. So we provide transportation to the DMV for that reason, but also because, my job is going to the DMV for a living. And it's not the most pleasant place. It's not the most patient place. It is not a place that is always very kind to people who are unhoused, people who are elderly, people who have disabilities or are young, or really anybody. And we find that our clients face a lot of problems when they go, but also are very intimidated because they are used to not being treated well in official spaces. So we always go with them, or the vast majority of the time we go with them, so that we can help walk them through the process. We can pay for everything there. We can make sure that the system moves as smoothly as possible. During COVID, this wasn't obviously possible. And so we came up with some virtual systems that worked pretty well. But we tried to get back on the ground as soon as we could when things were reopening, because it's just better for our clients. And so part of a large part of fundraising goes towards that. We also have staff. We have field staff. We have Jennifer, who does fundraising, and Maisha, who does partnership, and et cetera. And so a large part of donations go towards providing salaries for our staff, and health insurance and those types of things. And then for us, a very, very small percentage. In fact, I think you'll have a hard time finding organizations that have a smaller percentage that go towards sort of office type things or administrative type things, because we don't have office spaces. We all work either from home, or when we're doing ID work with clients, we go to where they are. So we go to shelters or to places on, Skid Row or in town or whatever, rather than making people come to us. So we don't have any office expenses, which beyond rent, like electricity and snacks, whatever. We don't have any of that. We have things like our Zoom account and whatever sort of small things like that, our database software that we pay for. But a very small percentage for us goes towards those other expenses. There are a lot of nonprofits that have to have a location. And so then that adds a lot of expenses for them, but that's not where ours goes. So for us, it's mostly going either directly to the people internally or directly to the people externally.
Awesome. So if someone wanted to give to the organization, what would be the best way to do it?
So there are a few different options. One thing that's really meaningful for smaller organizations is if you become a small dollar monthly donor, it makes a big impact. So, we have folks who've been giving us $5 a month for 8 years, and that adds up, and that's amazing. And we have folks who give $50 a quarter or whatever. So becoming a monthly or a regular contributing donor is really helpful, because that, I know based on our monthly donors exactly how much we're getting every month, which helps us be able to plan ahead and just know that that's money that we can count on. You can also, however, make one-time donations. You can do it the same form at spreadthevote.org/donate. And that is also super helpful. We also take donations in stock. So if you are interested in that, then there is an email on our donation page. It's just development at spreadthevote.org is pretty basic. And you can donate stock to our Fidelity account. And there's also a mailing address on our website so that you can mail a check. And if anyone who listens to this is running a nonprofit, you probably have an address because you know that if you don't have an address where someone can write a check, you will get an angry email asking why you don't have an address where they can mail a check. Because a lot of people, particularly more elderly people, still really, really want to mail a check to donate, and we get a lot of this. So those are the 4 main ways that you could give.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, any closing remarks about why you're doing this? Anything new coming up, or any initiatives moving forward that you want to talk about?
I will say that we're about to announce a big new initiative that we're working on that I'm really, really excited about. You can, if you go to spreadthevote.org or projectid.org, you can sign up for our Substack and keep apprised of all of the goings on and new news and announcements. And also just learning more about sort of this issue and how it's relevant in the current times by subscribing to the Substack.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And we're going to definitely post some information up on social and on our Substack, and we'll get that out to everybody ASAP. So thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Thanks for joining us for the Give Smart podcast. We'll be back again next week. If you'd like to learn more about the organization that we've just interviewed, check us out on our socials. You can find us on Instagram or Facebook at Give Smart Pod. And we'll also be posting more information on our Substack at the Give Smart Podcast. If you're interested in finding more about my day job, check out grassrootsnonprofitgrowth.com, or you can also buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Jenny Mullinax, Mullanax. Special thanks to Kat Calvin for being our guest today. And you can visit projectid.org or spreadthevote.org to find out more or to donate. See you next week.
Yeah, well,